Good morning, Siena, and greetings from Montreal. I hope you're having a wonderful time in Siena. I certainly wish I was there with you. So I'm going to be talking today about the growing partnership between the Ecological Law and Governance Association and the North American-based Economics for the Anthropocene partnership, which is now becoming the leadership for the Ecozoic initiative. And this initiative is based at McGill University here in Montreal in partnership with the University of Vermont, York University, and many other academic and non-academic partners. Before I get into the details of the partnership, I just really want to review where we are both in the world and in North America in terms of our ecological footprint, one imperfect but still useful measure of how we're dealing with the ecosystems that support us. In this chart from the 2018 Living Planet report, and I'm a big fan of those reports, shows that we entered into an overshoot capacity in terms of use of the world's biocapacity in around 1970. And this chart shows that we just built this ecological debt since. And what I like a lot about this is that it shows how that ecological footprint breaks down into different pressures that we're exerting. Well, North America is a huge contributor to this problem. And this map shows different countries of the world in terms of their per capita consumption ecological footprint. The yellow countries, as with most of Africa, have very low per capita footprints, and the purple countries have the highest. And you can see North America is the most purple of all. And here are the numbers. This data is from the 2019 Global Footprint Network website based on 2016 data, and it shows that the sustainable footprint per capita would be 1.63 hectares per person, but already the global average is at 2.75 hectares, and that's the same information that you saw in that first chart. And again, the United States and Canada are a big part of the problem, with 8.1 and 7.7 hectares per person on average, and even Mexico is above the global, is above the sustainable footprint, although well below, a little bit below the global average. So why isn't environmental law dealing with this challenge? Why is this problem growing even though we have environmental laws around the world? Well, in my research, I looked at several environmental laws that seem to have an ecosystemic basis, and I tested them out against one of the main criteria of ecological law is the ecological limit, which would be applicable paramount. Does it trump other considerations on how society functions? So I looked at the Montreal Protocol, several provisions of American law, and the Convention on Long-Range Transport of Air Pollution, which is mainly active in Europe, although the acid rain program in the US is part of it. Well, the Montreal Protocol on substances that deplete the ozone layer has had modest success, and that the long-term trend now is of decreasing ozone depleting substances as a result of that protocol. And many people think that really the Montreal Protocol is an anomaly, that because there were substitutes of the substances involved, it was relatively easy to get industry to go along with it, whereas problems like climate change are really much more embedded within all aspects of the economy. Well, I found that all of these other examples failed. The US Clean Air Act's provisions on climate change are simply trying to force something into the Clean Air Act which wasn't truly intended to be there, even though the Supreme Court of the United States has said that the Clean Air Act covers climate pollution. And along with this, we know that both the United States and Canada have weak targets and weak programs to reach those targets with respect to controlling greenhouse gas emissions. The US Clean Air Act's acid rain program while it did set a cap on sulfur dioxide and other acid-producing air pollutants, simply didn't have an ecosystemic basis. When you dig into the details, you find that the cap was based on political and technological concerns and economic concerns. And in fact, acid rain problems are persisting in the Adirondacks and other areas that were affected despite that program, and despite the fact that acid rain has decreased. The US Clean Air Act's maximum daily loads, well, those were designed to control water quality or water pollution in water bodies that have exceeded their water quality standard. And those water quality standards are more or less based on some ecosystemic concerns. The problem is that that's entirely a voluntary program, and that's because one of the big contributors is agriculture, and that's simply not something that the United States government has been willing to regulate so far. A similar problem plagues the Convention on Long-Range Transboundary Air Pollution and its effect both on acid rain and nutrient loading in water bodies. So what explains the situation? Well, in my research, I also look at what I call lock-in and lockout challenges. So these are obstacles to ecological law that are hardwired into the system, either very strongly or less so. And what I've just listed here are some of the main lock-in lockout obstacles to overcome, which I think are particularly strong in North America. So you have strong commitment to GDP growth, strong private property rights and state sovereignty, strong commitment to industrialization and commodification, strong consumerism with a strong advertising culture where self-worth is tied to consumption. There's a complex webs of investments. For example, a lot of people's retirement savings here are invested in stock portfolios that are invested in the status quo. There is a very high fear of sort of the watermelon phenomenon. In other words, anything green is seen as pink or socialist or communist on the inside. There's weak commitment to weak climate targets, high inequality of wealth, and making money is a shared goal that a lot of people in this continent want to achieve. A lot of lack of awareness and or concern about climate justice and other global justice issues, and a strong legacy of colonialism and oppression of First Peoples, much of which is simply not acknowledged in our legal systems. I'm just going to mention this book, Merchants of Doubt, which many of you probably know, Naomi Oreskes and Eric Conway's extremely well done book, exposing a campaign by wealthy conservatives in the United States to raise doubts despite strong scientific evidence about the need to control things like acid rain, the ozone depletion of the ozone layer, and of course now climate change. This is very much an American story and one that ecological law must respond to. So the partnership between ELGA and E4A started with an October 2017 workshop. This took place immediately after the official launch of ELGA in Siena. We looked at the problem of why we need to move from environmental to ecological law, the solution, what is the meaning of ecological law, and how do we get there, the challenge of transition. And we have all of the presentations there on a YouTube link, which I've put here, and I invite you to look at those excellent presentations there. Many of those presentations were also published in a special issue of the Vermont Law Review that came out earlier this year. And our partnership continues. So what we're working on now is to continue developing the partnership for E4A and L4E to continue participating in the ELGA webinar series that started this year. We have publications in mind, including a pending publication with Routledge from environmental law to ecological law. We plan this next year to conduct environmental law and governance tribunals based on the Permanent Peoples Tribunal approach. We'll participate in the name of E4A and ELGA in workshops and conferences. This year it was at the Canadian Society of Ecological Economics. Next year we hope to be at the International Degrowth and Ecological Economic Society meeting. And we're looking for ways to engage students at McGill, Vermont Law School, and other schools in our work. So that's a quick overview of what we're doing. Again, I hope you have a wonderful time there, and next time I'll be there. Thank you.